Hello, this presentation is going to be about lifestyle advice for people with type 2 diabetes. First of all, people with type 2 diabetes do not need to consume special foods or follow complicated diets. There can be a lot of confusion around nutrition and type 2 diabetes, which is caused by the media. However, it does not need to be so complicated. So one point that I would like to convey is that it is so important to eat a varied, healthy, balanced diet. So for example, we need over 40 different nutrients for good health, and no single food or supplement is going to supply them to us. So that's why it's important that we consume many different foods that we will discuss further on in this presentation. Then of course the food quality and the quantity that we have, so that would be in relation to the portion sizes, is also very important for weight control, weight maintenance and for our general good health. So glycemic index is a term that is often used particularly with people who have type 2 diabetes, or you even might see them in the shops. Oftentimes you'll see a brown bread called low GI bread, and basically what this means is it's used to rank carbohydrates based on the rate at which they raise blood glucose levels. So for example, if we have something, just take the brown bread for example, that is a low GI bread or a low GI food, this will have a steady, slow release of blood sugar throughout the body over time, whereas something with a high GI will cause a sharp rise in blood sugar levels, as you can see from the red line here on the graph, and then it will, when it reaches the peak, it will decline rapidly. So that's when you will have, you'll start to feel more hungry and crave food. So when we talk about carbohydrates, people tend to be confused about what a carbohydrate actually is. People often associate bread and pasta as carbohydrates, and while this is true, fruit and vegetables are also considered, as well as dairy products, are also considered as carbohydrates. As well as that, carbohydrates are so important. They are a major source of energy. They are used by every single cell in our body, and they are so important. So when we break down the different types of carbohydrates, we have simple carbohydrates, and these are known as our sugars. So within that then we have natural sugars and added or refined sugar. So our natural sugars can be found in fruits, vegetables and dairy products, whereas our added and refined sugars are found in our table sugar, our sweets, cakes, syrup, white bread. And just in relation to the previous slide, these would have a high glycemic index, so they would cause a quick spike in blood sugar, as you can see from the diagram underneath. Now, people will say, oh, what's the difference between fruits, vegetables and dairy products to table sugar, sweets, cakes if they're ranked under the same bracket per se? Well, if you think about it, when we eat an apple or a piece of fruit or vegetables or dairy products, we're also getting added vitamins, minerals and fibre, whereas if we were to have a cake or a sweet, they would be lacking in our vitamins, minerals and fibre, so they would be much more nutritious to us. Then in terms of complex carbohydrates, so on the right side of the slide, that's broken down into fibre and starches. So fibre is important for our digestive health because it stimulates movement. It also gives us a feeling of fullness, and this will be found in our whole grain foods, so you know, the brown varieties of breads, pasta, rice. It's also found in fruit, vegetables, lentils, peas, beans and meat. And then when we look at the starches, these take much longer to break down, and again we would always recommend to choose the whole grain options here. So these would give a low glycemic index, which means that they would have a slow, gradual increase in blood sugar. So it's more of a steady curve in the body. So this table here is just some examples of different low GI foods, medium GI foods and high GI foods. Now you'll see in the bottom left hand corner, you'll see the brown bread titled low GI bread. Any whole grain variety food, whether it be bread, pasta, rice, will have a low glycemic index response in the body. This is just a clever technique used by the marketers. So we often get asked what's the best diet for someone who has type 2 diabetes, and the answer is actually very simple. It's a healthy, varied, balanced diet. But people can be confused about what a healthy, varied, balanced diet is, because we read it everywhere, but no one actually tells us what it means. So I'm just going to discuss now what this means. So it's based on the food pyramid, which I'm sure you've seen before, and as you can see, the vegetable, salad and fruit, which is on the bottom shelf, it's recommended for us to consume more of these foods in a day, and to consume smaller amounts of the foods that are at the top of the shelf, so our foods that will be high in sugar, salt and fat. I'm going to talk you through the different shelves of the food pyramid that we've seen in the previous slide, starting from the bottom upwards. So the bottom shelf is fruits, vegetables and salad, and it's recommended to enjoy 5 servings of this group per day. And the reason for this is because they're low in calories, they're high in fibre, vitamins and minerals, they contain natural sugar, and especially for people with type 2 diabetes, we would always advise our clients to pay attention to how much fruit you are consuming at any one time. So people can get confused here and they'll say, oh, I don't eat much fruit, or I eat too much fruit. But really we don't want either to happen. We want people to consume fruit because of the fibre, vitamins and minerals. However, if you do consume too much of it, it is going to cause a quick spike in blood sugars. So what we would always say to people is to consume 1 portion of fruit at a time, and when you do, to have a protein source with that, or unsaturated fat source with that. So for example, the unsaturated fat would be your 100% peanut butter or almond butter, so you might have a banana with that, or an apple. Or if you wanted to have a source of protein with that, that would be, say for example, your Greek style yogurt, or your milk, a glass of milk for example, or some cheese. I'm going to talk to you now about the serving sizes of the fruits, vegetables and salad. So 1 serving is equal to 2 small fruits, so this would be your 2 mandarin oranges, your 2 kiwis or your 2 plums. It's 1 medium sized fruit, so 1 apple, 1 banana, 1 orange or 1 pear. Then when we talk about the berries, it says here 6 strawberries, 10 grapes, 16 raspberries. However, you don't need to go and count out your fruit. I would generally say a handful is equal to 1 portion. And just if you are interested in grams, it's 80 grams is equal to 1 serving of fruit or vegetables or salad. So in terms then of dried fruit, 1 serving is equal to 1 heaped dessert spoon of raisins, sultanas, 2 figs, 3 prunes or 1 handful of dried banana chips. Then in terms of your tinned and cooked fruit, 1 serving is equal to 80 grams, and we would always recommend for people to choose the options that are in their own natural juices rather than if they were in syrup, due to the added sugar. In terms then of juices or smoothies, 1 serving is equal to 1 glass, and this would be 150 mils. So it is actually quite a small glass of unsweetened 100% fruit or vegetable juice. So this would be the options that say not from concentrate. However, only 1 glass counts towards your 5 to 7 a day. If you consume over 150 mils, it won't count towards your daily intake. And the reason for this is because if you pour a 200 ml glass, for example, it might take 10 oranges to make that glass of orange juice, whereas you'd never sit down and physically eat 10 oranges, but it can be very easy to drink it. So in terms then of the natural sugars, although they are natural, it is still quite a lot of sugar to be consuming at any one time. So we would be talking about the high glycemic response there, as mentioned previously. So just to be mindful of that. I'd always say to people, if they wanted to make a breakfast smoothie, to add in your 150 ml or even less of your 100% fruit or vegetable juice, add in your 125 grams of yogurt, add in your 30 to 40 grams of porridge oats, and make a breakfast smoothie out of it. So that way you have your whole grain oats, you have your protein from your yogurt, and that's going to slow down that glycemic response, and you're only getting the one serving there. And sorry there, I forgot to include to add in your one serving of fruit. So for example, if you wanted to add in a handful of strawberries, that would be a good breakfast option also, especially for people who are on the road and they're stuck for time in the morning. You can even make this the night before, so then all you have to do is bring it in the car or on the train and have it on the way to work. So then in terms of your cooked vegetables, it's half of a 200 ml plastic cup. Again, this is equal to 80 grams. However, I always say to people, the more vegetables and the more salad, the better. So I would not be concerned about the portions that you'd be having here. It's more is best. So then in terms of your salad, then it's a bowl of mixed salad, or it's one medium-sized tomato, or a chunk of cucumber, 5 centimetres to be precise, but we don't all carry rulers around with us, so again, anything is great here. So then in terms of our soup, then it's one bowl of homemade vegetable soup. So the next shelf then we're going to talk about is the whole grain cereals, breads, pasta and rice, and it's recommended to enjoy 3 to 5 servings per day and up to 7 servings for men aged 19 to 50 years. Now you'll notice there's quite a variation between the recommended servings, and the reason for this is because females will generally require less from this group than males, because males have more muscle mass, so they burn more calories, so they need the extra calories to carry out their daily functions. And then you need to consider, is the person active? So if they are active, then they would obviously need to consume more from this group, because remember, this is where we would get our main fuel from. This would be like our fibre and our starch, carbohydrates. And then you need to consider, does the person want to lose weight? So say for example I have a female who wants to lose weight, then I would always recommend to enjoy 3 servings from this group. If it's an active female who wants to lose weight, I recommend 3.5 to 4 servings depending on the person. This is very individualised, so if you have any questions personally about how much you should consume, don't be afraid to pop us an email and we will be more than happy to help you out with this. Then for a man, you would be looking at the 4 to 5 range, depending on their activity level as well. So if you have a young teenage boy who's very active, then you'll be talking between the 5 to 7 range, because they have so much, they need that extra energy. So then in terms of the servings for this, 1 serving is equal to 1 cup of cooked rice, pasta, noodles or couscous. So again, this is based on a 200 ml plastic cup. If you want the weight in grams, it's 50 grams of uncooked rice and 75 grams of uncooked pasta. So it's the 50 grams uncooked rice, 75 grams pasta. Then it's 2 slices of wholemeal bread. It says there 1.5 slices of soda bread, but 2 slices is fine, or 1 pita pocket. Then it would be your 1 cup of flaked breakfast cereal, so in grams this would equate to 45 to 50 grams. In terms of potatoes, 1 serving is 2 medium potatoes or 4 small potatoes. And then in terms of porridge, it's 30 grams of porridge oats or 45 grams of unsweetened muesli. So if you just take, for example, you might have porridge in the morning or Weetabix, that would be 1 serving. Then for lunch you might have a sandwich, using 2 slices of bread, that would be 2 servings, and then for dinner you'll generally have potatoes, pasta or rice, so that would be 3 there. The next shelf on the food pyramid is the milk, cheese and yogurt shelf, and it's recommended to enjoy 3 servings per day and up to 5 servings for those aged 9 to 18. So 1 serving is equal to 1 200ml glass of milk. It's also equal to 1 125 gram pot of yogurt or 1 200ml yogurt drink. Although the picture says low fat yogurt, it really depends on the products that you're comparing. So generally the products with the lowest fat and the lowest sugar are the 0% fat natural yogurt. So this could be your natural or your Greek style yogurt. They are generally the better options to go for. However, if people don't like the taste of natural yogurt, the Glycemic brands, which do have a flavour, are generally low in added sugars compared to other brands which say low fat yogurt and they're flavoured, but they have a lot of added sugar added to them. Then in terms of cheese, 1 serving is equal to 25 grams of cheese. Now I would say to my clients to weigh this out once, see what it looks like visually, and then you'll know from then on in and around what is equal to 25 grams. So if you are a big cheese lover and you cut the 25 grams off the block of cheddar cheese, for example, and you are shocked at the amount that it's equal to, I would always say to people, if you grate the cheddar cheese, you'll get more volume for weight. So psychologically you think you're eating more. The next shelf then is the meat, poultry, fish, eggs, beans and nuts shelf, and it's recommended to enjoy 2 servings daily from this shelf. So 1 serving of meat and poultry is equal to 50 to 75 grams of cooked meat. Now, not all of us have the time to be weighing out our meats in the evening or during the day, so generally I would say 1 chicken breast or 1 pork chop is equal to 1 serving. In terms of fish then, 100 grams of cooked fish, which is also equal to say like a salmon darn or a cod fillet. If you like tinned tuna or tinned salmon, again it would be the 80 grams, which is equal to 1 serving, and I would always say to choose the fish that's in spring water rather than in brine because they can have added salt to them. In terms of nuts and seeds then, 1 serving is equal to 40 grams. I would always say again to weigh this out once, see what it is in tablespoons or teaspoons, or look at it on your hand, so then the next time you have them you generally know in and around what 1 serving looks like. So for example it could be 2 tablespoons, but again each nut and seed is a different size, so it'll be different for the different varieties that you have. Then in terms of the beans, peas and lentils then, 1 serving is equal to 6 dessert spoons, and in terms of eggs, 1 serving is equal to 2 eggs. The next shelf then is the fats, spreads and oils, and these are recommended in small amounts. So we would always recommend olive oil or rapeseed oil because they are higher in the unsaturated fats, which we want to consume more of, and lower in saturated fat, which we want to consume less of. So for example, 1 serving would be 1 teaspoon of oil per person when cooking. So for example, if you're cooking for 2 people, you could use 2 teaspoons, 4 teaspoons, but sometimes you might not need to add any oil. So for example, if you're frying mince and you're using a non-stick frying pan, there's enough juices in the mince itself to cook. Then in terms of butter and spreads, although it says on the image here to choose the light spread or the reduced fat spread, I personally prefer the real stuff, the real butter, but again I would recommend just a thin spread on your slices of bread. It shouldn't look like cheese. So this image here is actually a worksheet that we use with our clients, and it just breaks down everything that we've talked about in terms of serving sizes based on the food pyramid into an easy, practical, day-to-day tool that you can use. So just for example, if we look at the Monday column, so beside the fruits, vegetables and salad, you'll see 5 to 7 circles. So every time you have a serving, you can colour it in or tick it off. The same with the remaining circles. Now this particular worksheet was based on an inactive male who wanted to lose weight, so that's why he has 4 servings of the wholemeal cereals, breads, pasta, potatoes and rice. And then as you move down, you can see the corresponding circles which relate to the servings that they had. So beside the fluid then you will see 10 glasses of fluid. You can decide what 1 glass is equal to, whether it's equal to a 200ml glass, if it's equal to a 500ml bottle, if it's equal to a litre. It's up to you to decide, and you can colour that in or tick that off when you have a serving. So at the bottom then you'll also see a column for physical activity. So this is to include the type, the duration and the steps. So this can be good just to keep account of everything that you've done that day, so that when you want to look over your week it can be easy to review. But you can also, it also is a good guide for yourself to see where you're eating too much of or where you're eating too little of. The next slide, shall I say, is an image of a dinner plate. So generally as a guide we always say to people is for half the plate to be of vegetables and salad, 1/4 to be from a protein source, and then the remaining quarter to be from a starchy carbohydrate. So this would be your potatoes, your pasta, your rice. Now it doesn't literally have to be sectioned out in proportion to this slide. So for example, if you're having a shepherd's pie, by having the majority of it vegetables, having your reduced fat mince in there and then your potatoes on top, it would equate to the same. So just some lifestyle recommendations then, what we would give to someone with type 2 diabetes would be to eat regular meals. So this is essential for good glucose control, and it also helps to prevent overeating. So for example, if you are not eating enough throughout the day, when it does come down to eating, you generally will overeat because you are so hungry from the lack of food throughout the day. So generally as a guide, every 4 hours should be when we should be having a main meal, and then snacks in between if we're hungry. To manage our portion sizes, which we just discussed previously, choose whole grain varieties, so your brown pasta, rice, noodles. To choose more unsaturated fats instead of saturated fats. So your unsaturated fats would be the fish, the nuts, the seeds, the oil, olive oil, rapeseed oil, whereas the saturated fats then would be like your butter, your margarine, your coconut oil, fried foods, etc. So the next point then is to enjoy meat-free meals throughout the week. So as an Irish nation we tend to consume a lot of meat. Sometimes we eat it 2-3 times a day, whereas we should be reducing that to maybe once a week, so or once in the day, so once per meal. But even sometimes to enjoy meat-free options, and the reason for this is because it's lower in fat and higher in fibre. Now if you are having meat, we'd always recommend for people to consume lean meats. So these would be like your chicken, turkey that have the skin removed, that has the fat removed. If you like rashers, to have the bacon medallions because they have no fat on them. So the next point then is to enjoy 2 servings of fish during the week. So white fish is a low fat protein source. Oily fish, that would be like your salmon and your tuna, your sardines, they contain heart protecting omega-3 fatty acids. The next point then is to drink 8 to 10 glasses of fluid per day. So when we talk about fluid, this literally means every type of fluid that we consume. So that could be water, milk, the no added sugar, dilute, squash, juice, tea, coffee, etc. It is recommended to have a maximum of 3 to 4 cups of caffeine per day, so that could be like your tea and your coffee. After that, if you do enjoy a cup of tea or coffee, to switch to the decaf, because it can affect our sleep and people can become addicted to caffeine and have withdrawal symptoms. So the main point here is that we should be consuming more water and milk as our fluid sources. Now, although it says to drink 8 to 10 glasses, this isn't really specific to individual, because we all have different hydration needs based on our sweat rates, the temperature, our activity level. So the only way that we can determine if we're drinking enough fluid is to monitor our urine colour. So it should be between a pale yellow to a clear colour. That would indicate that we are hydrated. Any darker, then it would highlight that we are dehydrated. So it's important to keep an eye on this. So treats can be enjoyed as part of a healthy, balanced diet, but they should not be consumed every day. So we all enjoy chocolate, cake every now and then, but again, it shouldn't be consumed every day. I would always say to my clients, moderation, not deprivation. We're all human at the end of the day. The next point then is to increase physical activity. So to aim for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity on 5 to 7 days per week, and to include 1 to 2 strength-based exercise sessions. Now, I'll discuss this in the future slides coming up. So if a person was interested in weight loss, we would always recommend a weight loss of 1 to 2 pounds per week, because anything greater than that would indicate to us that it's not body fat that they're actually losing. It would be more fluid and muscle mass. And one thing that we do not want to be losing is our muscle mass, because it is so important that we have good, healthy, strong muscles. So particularly with those who have type 2 diabetes, it's recommended to walk for over 10 minutes after a meal. So for example, in the evening, if you're having your dinner, say at 5 o'clock, if you went for a walk, when you're finished that, it is shown to decrease our blood glucose levels, and I'll explain that in the upcoming slides. So just before we move on, I just want to draw your attention to the point here in blue. So it is crucial that people with type 2 diabetes make healthy lifestyle choices, as they have an increased risk of developing cardiovascular diseases. So by following the advice that I said there, so having a healthy, balanced diet, engaging in physical activity, it's going to have a positive effect on your health, and it's going to decrease your risk of cardiovascular diseases in the future. So just some exercise considerations before we go on to talk about it. So if you are someone who is monitoring your blood glucose, if your blood glucose reading is below 5 millimoles per litre before exercise, it would be recommended to have a snack containing 15 to 30 grams of carbohydrate, and this would be the fast-acting carbohydrates. So this would be, for example, the 3 to 4 of your glucose tablets. Now this is only if your blood glucose is low. We wouldn't recommend this in any other circumstance. If your blood glucose is over 14 millimoles per litre before exercise, it is possible that glucose will continue to rise when you're exercising. So we would recommend that you engage in low intensity exercise rather than high intensity exercise, so like a light walk. There are many benefits associated with physical activity. So if we look at physical health, there's an increase in muscle mass. So this would be if the person is doing resistance training, and that would then lead to increased strength, increased endurance, a lower risk of injuries, and an increase in functionality of everyday activities. It would also result in an increased bone density, so this would in turn then reduce the risk of bone issues. It decreases fat mass, which decreases the risk of health issues such as diabetes and heart diseases, and it also increases your cardiovascular fitness. So in terms of mental health then, there has been plenty of research to support that it results in improved sleep, decreased rates of anxiety, depression, mental stress, higher positive moods, higher self-esteem, the social aspect, and it's fun. Okay, so exercise and blood sugar control. So people with type 2 diabetes have too much glucose in their blood, and this is because of two possible reasons. So one, their body doesn't produce enough insulin to lower the glucose levels, because remember, insulin is needed to reduce glucose levels in the bloodstream. or 2, their body doesn't use insulin, which is needed to bring down the glucose, properly. This is also known as insulin resistant. However, exercise can reduce blood glucose levels as muscles use glucose without the need for insulin. As a result, glucose levels decrease. The exercise also makes your insulin more effective, which means that your cells can use glucose more effectively, and as a result there is improved diabetes control and the risk of heart disease is reduced. So as you can see from this slide, it is so important for those with type 2 diabetes to engage in regular physical activity. So how much physical activity should we do each week? So exercise is broken down into your aerobic exercise, your resistance exercise and your flexibility. So in terms of the aerobic exercise, it's recommended to engage in 3 to 5 days per week, with exercise lasting 30 to 60 minutes per session. So aerobic exercise refers to exercises such as walking, dancing, cycling, swimming, and these should be done at a moderate intensity. So I always refer to it as the talk test. So you should be able to feel your heart beating, but you should still be able to hold a conversation. Then if your goal is weight loss in relation to the same type of activity, this would be increased then to 5 to 7 days per week, building it up more towards the 60 minutes per session, and again at a moderate intensity. In terms then of your resistance training, this would be also, examples of this would be your TRX, your weights, your body weight exercises, and this would be recommended for health and for weight loss to do it 2 days per week, 30 to 60 minutes per session, and this exercise uses all major muscle groups. So the next type of exercise is flexibility. So for health and weight loss, it's recommended to engage in 10 minutes per day, 1 flexibility class per week if possible, and this would generally last for 45 minutes. And this type of exercise involves stretching all of the major muscles. Now it's important when you're doing this to hold to the point of tension and not pain. So yoga, stretches, Pilates would be example of flexibility exercises. So I'm just going to talk through now a simple meal plan just to tie everything in together. So this plan is based on an inactive female who wants to improve their overall health and with a specific goal of weight loss. So for breakfast, say around 8 o'clock, they could have cinnamon porridge and banana, or they could have overnight oats or scrambled eggs on toast. With paying particular attention to the serving sizes. So 30 grams of your oats or 2 eggs would be the 1 serving as we discussed previously. I always recommend as well for people to have a glass of water with each meal, just to ensure that people are meeting their fluid requirements throughout the day. Then for this particular person, then I'd recommend them to have an early dinner at 12 p.m. and this could be, for example, a chicken pesto pasta or a mango chicken sweet potato wedges and peas, and again including the glass of water there also. So the reason why I recommended this person to have their dinner earlier in the day rather than later in the day is because if she has her main meal at 12 o'clock, it has a longer time to digest and she's generally going to be more active throughout the day, which is going to decrease those blood glucose levels as we discussed earlier. So oftentimes I would say to someone, if they had their dinner, to go for a 10-15 minute walk afterwards, because it will help to reduce that spike in blood sugar levels, particularly those with type 2 diabetes. Then for a snack at 4 p.m, an example would be, say, like a medium raw carrot, a medium sized celery stick and a tablespoon of reduced fat hummus. Or they could have crunchy fruit and yogurt using 125 gram pot of 0% fat Greek style yogurt, 30 grams of your trail mix and a medium sized apple. And again including a glass of water here just as a reminder. So for the evening lunch then, around 6 or 7 p.m, this person could have something like a tuna baked potato or a grilled chicken salad sandwich, and again including the glass of water there also. Now you'll notice I didn't include teas or coffees throughout the day, and that's because Some people like it, some people don't, but if you do like to have your tea and coffee throughout the day, then you can, but just be mindful of the amount that you're drinking. So the guidelines would be 3 to 4 cups of caffeinated drinks. So if you are drinking any more than that, then it would be recommended to switch to the decaf, particularly in the afternoon, evening time, because it can affect people's sleep, and if you're having too much of it, it can also increase stress and anxiety. So just to conclude then, after the sample meal plan, I would also strongly encourage this person to engage in physical activity for 30 to 60 minutes 7 days per week, and that would include your aerobic, your flexibility and your resistance training.